All right, guys, I'm going to be going through the remainder of your notes with you. The title of the notes were Progressive Era Politics. We left off talking about Theodore Roosevelt and a lot of the changes he made both in conserving natural resources and also how he fought big, powerful corporations. He wasn't the only one, though, that's going to kick off the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era is not just going to be a presidential movement. There's going to be these writers that are going to be called Muckrakers. Um, and they're going to be exposing problems in politics and businesses. Three different examples that you need to know. The first one is Ida Tarbell. She's this lady pictured on the slide. She is going to write about John Rockefeller destroying businesses and really start to turn the tide against John Rockefeller. Before her writing, Rockefeller was viewed more favorably. After her writing, people are going to think that the monopolies need to be broken up. She's not the most popular, though. Probably the most popular muckraker was a person named Upton Sinclair. He wrote a book called The Jungle, and this is going to expose the meatpacking industry. Food was becoming a much, much larger corporation. People were moving away from growing their own food and buying food themselves, but there were no health and safety standards put into place. He highlighted that with this grotesque book, talking about what all the horrible things that were done to meat. This is going to lead to the Pure Food and Drug Act, which created the FDA, and the Meat Inspection Act, which allows for us to know that the meat that we think we're consuming is actually the meat that we're consuming. The final person is a guy named Jacob Riis, and he is going to write a book called How the Other Half Lives, and he's going to show how poor and immigrants lived in cities. You could also add Helen Hunt Jackson's book, The Century of Dishonor, as kind of a precursor to Muckrakers. To kind of understand what Upton Sinclair was writing about in The Jungle, you can read this excerpt right here. It says, the meat would be shoveled into carts, and the man who did the shoveling would not trouble to lift a rat even when he saw one. There were things that went into the sausage in comparison, with which a poisoned rat was a tidbit. There was no place for men to wash their hands before they ate their dinner, so they made a practice of washing them in the water that was to be ladled into the sausage. There were the butt ends of smoked meat and the scraps of corned beef and all the odds and ends of the waste of the plants that would be dumped into old barrels in the cellar and left there. Every spring they'd open the barrels and there would be dirt and rust and old nails and stale water, and cartload after cartload of it would be taken up and dumped into hoppers with the fresh meat and sent out to the public's breakfast. So it was this type of writing that he did to expose the horrible things that were going on with our meat. It makes no surprise that we did have a massive spike in life expectancy after the FDA was created, mainly because our food was not poisoned anymore. All right. So President Taft is our second progressive president. Teddy Roosevelt at the end of his presidency was so insanely popular that he basically hand selected who was going to succeed him, and he chose President Taft. Taft is going to win under that nomination, but Taft did not do exactly what Roosevelt wanted. He did go after businesses just as hard as Roosevelt. However, he did not continue to protect the environment in the same way. And so because of that caused Roosevelt to actually run against him in 1912. This split the vote between the Republican Party, because you had two Republicans running, so about half voted for Taft and half voted for Roosevelt. But then all the Democrats voted for their guy, Woodrow Wilson, and that caused for Woodrow Wilson to win. Outside of Taft being very, very aggressive towards monopolies, he was actually maybe even more aggressive towards monopolies and breaking apart monopolies than Roosevelt was. The biggest thing that Taft is known for is actually how big he was. He had a specially made bathtub made for him in the White House. You can see that picture down there where the four men are sitting in it. He did one time get stuck in a bathtub. It was not this bathtub pictured here. I'm pretty sure like a baby hippopotamus could not get stuck in that bathtub. It was a separate bathtub after he was president, but that legacy kind of lived with him forever. There was this industrial fire that took place during the Progressive Era called the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. We talked about it actually as a today in history. 145 people died, and most of them jumping to their death. It was a very, very public incident, and it caused for more labor standards to be created to protect workers' rights. All right, and then finally we have Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson is going to be the president who's probably going to do the most in terms of establishing our modern economy. He's going to create something called the Federal Reserve, and that controls the flow of money. This is basically the third bank of the United States. Remember, the first bank was created by um, Alexander Hamilton. The second bank was created under the American system until Andrew Jackson had destroyed it. And for the past 70 to 80 years, we really hadn't had anything controlling the flow of money. The Federal Reserve does that today. There were also several amendments that were created. Not all of these amendments were passed directly under Roosevelt, but most of them were. The first is the 16th Amendment. This created income tax, and this was supposed to help with wealth inequality. The second was the 17th Amendment, which is where senators were elected by the people. Beforehand, senators were not chosen by the people. You would vote for a political party, and then your political party would get to decide who the senator would be. A lot of times it'd be somebody who would work for a monopoly. This was to try to stop political corruption. The 18th Amendment is going to ban alcohol. This is that idea of a moral standard being created in society through laws. And then the 19th Amendment is going to give women the right to vote, making America more democratic. So if you're thinking about this, the 17th Amendment and the 19th Amendment both make America more democratic. And that's all you got.